A man moves to a new town, opens up a shop in the exact location where the previous tenant had just so happened to disappear under mysterious circumstances. There's no scarier setting for an unsolved mystery than in the woods. And they're old, and they're big, and they're alive with all sorts of creatures and stories. Today, we're digging into 5 of the strangest ones out there. Here are 5 Dark Forest mysteries. Number 5. 2 men vanished. The man then begins writing a novel about the disappearance, only to end up vanishing himself. Is that all just a weird coincidence? Or is there something much darker to this whole twisted tale of Keith Reinhardt? In the summer of 1988, 49-year-old Keith Reinhardt was a journalist and sports writer based in Chicago. And in his heart, he had always wanted to be a novelist, and seeing time slipping away, he decided not to wait any longer and set out to fulfill that dream. Him and his wife wanted a place where they could be inspired, away from all the city noise, and so they headed out to Silver Plume, Colorado, a small town nestled in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. Reinhardt rented a small shop in the town, intending to sell antiques and souvenirs. But it wasn't just the merchandise that Keith was interested in. He was looking for inspiration for his epic novel, and he happened to find it right there in town. Upon moving, he discovered that his antique shop's previous renter, Tom Young, had it set up as a bookstore. The reason why it was available now to rent was because Tom had disappeared and no one knew where he'd gone. He had just vanished without a trace, and with the disappearance still fresh in the minds of Silver Plume's residents, Keith became intrigued. He couldn't stop thinking about it since he was in that store all the time. Keith asked everyone around town about it. He became fixated, and this was going to be the topic for his novel. But fiction and reality, as Keith was about to discover, have a way of intertwining in the most unexpected and terrifying ways sometimes. On July 31st of '88, 10 months after he had disappeared, Tom's body was discovered by 2 hunters in the woods of Silver Plume. Along with his dog right next to him, the 2 had been shot and the pistol found nearby. A week later, on August 7th, Keith then told his friends he was going for a hike up Pendleton Mountain, heading out that day around 4:30 in the afternoon, armed only with a small amount of water. He was seen heading out towards the trail by friends and other townsfolk, but Keith never returned that evening. The search for him began almost immediately, involving volunteers, local authorities who conducted aerial searches, and people marching along the rugged terrain down below. But there was no sign of Keith at all. No footprints, no discarded items, no evidence that he had even been out there. After a couple of weeks, the search was eventually called off, leaving 2 major questions. But what had happened to Keith Reinhardt? And was his disappearance somehow connected to the man who had vanished before him? The circumstances surrounding Tom's death had always been murky. Yes, the official ruling was that he had gone out there and done it to himself. But even before Keith's disappearance, that didn't always sit right with people. And once Keith vanished too, some speculated that maybe he stumbled upon something he shouldn't have. Perhaps a piece of information that connected Tom Young's death to something far darker. Others believed that the piece of the property they were renting had something to do with it. Maybe someone didn't want anyone in there, and so they decided to take them out. Whatever it was, to this day, Keith Reinhardt's body has never been found. His disappearance and the circumstances around it remain one of Colorado's most perplexing mysteries. Number 4. Michael Dunahee. On the Sunday afternoon of March 24th of 1991, in a small park in Victoria, British Columbia, a simple family outing quickly turned into chaos and tragedy. It would lead to one of Canada's largest search efforts that still holds up today. But in the end, what exactly happened to Michael Dunahee remains a total mystery. That day, 4-year-old Michael headed over to Blanchard Elementary School with his parents. His mother, Crystal, was part of a women's flag football team, and they had a game. And Father Bruce was there to watch, and so it was a typical family outing. And as is typical, young Michael wanted to play rather than spectate, and the playground was calling his name. And just as Crystal made her way onto the field, he asked her if he could go play on it. And it was just a few feet away from the field, so he said it was fine and not to move from there until his dad came and got him. After a few plays, Bruce headed over to check on his son, but he wasn't on that playground and he was nowhere in sight. And panic set in quickly. Bruce searched frantically, calling out Michael's name over and over, his voice growing more desperate with each passing second. Within just minutes, the area was transformed into ground zero for a search operation. His parents and children joined in, looking under every bush, behind every tree, but Michael was nowhere. And the police arrived, and soon, what started as a family's worst fear then spiraled into a full-blown investigation. The case gripped the community, and eventually volunteers by the hundreds joined in the search, combing through neighborhoods, parks, and forests. And posters with Michael's smiling face were plastered everywhere, his image burned into the minds of all those who saw it. That day, the boy was wearing a blue hooded jacket, Ninja Turtle t-shirt, khaki pants, and blue sneakers. A $100,000 reward was offered for any information leading to his return. The time just passed by with no one coming forward and no sign of the little boy. The police believed it was an abduction, given how fast it all transpired. Had he wandered off on his own, surely Michael would have been found. And there was talks of a man in the area, a guy in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, who sat in a brown van, but nothing was ever found when that angle was looked into. As the years have passed by, every once in a while a possible lead shows up that at first brings some hope, but ultimately leads to nothing. In 2006, for example, 15 years after Michael's disappearance, a witness came forward claiming to have seen a young man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Michael. The man, now in his late teens, had strikingly similar facial features, was living in the Vancouver area. The police followed up on the tip, but DNA testing confirmed he was not Michael. In 2020, a TikToker by the name of Shanger Danger shared a video where he had found a vintage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt in some mud in a river. The shirt was pulled up. The Dunahys looked at it, only to realize that it had different images than the one their boy was wearing. The police say that had this case happened nowadays, there's no doubt they would have solved it. With camera surveillance where it is now and how fast information can move, they feel that whoever took them wouldn't have gotten far before being tracked down. And somewhere out there, the answer to this mystery lies hidden, waiting to be uncovered. Until that day comes, Michael Dunahy's case remains unsolved, but still open. Number 3. The Ghosts of Epping Forest. Epping Forest, sprawling ancient forest in Essex, England, is a place where time seems to stand still. The dense canopy of trees, some over 1,000 years old, have seen a lot in their time. But it's not just history here that lingers in the air, and there's something more. A presence, or rather, multiple presences, have given these woods a reputation as one of the most haunted places in the country. To understand the hauntings of Epping Forest, first you have to explore its dark and violent past. This place has long been a hideout for outlaws, criminals, and killers. In the 18th century, it was the notorious haunt for the infamous highwayman Dick Turpin. And Turpin, with his gang, would rob villages and people passing through, often murdering them just out of convenience. They moved all through Epping Forest, using it as a cover and a place to call home. And the gang eventually dismantled, and people left or were killed, and Dick was hanged at the age of 33 after getting caught. So now, some say that his restless spirit still roams the woods, forever on the run and forever on the lookout for his next victim. The Turpin is just one of the many souls said to be trapped in the forest. Witnesses have reported seeing shadowy figures darting between the trees, hearing disembodied voices whispering in the darkness, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread while walking through. Some accounts describe a spectral woman dressed in white, her face a mask of sorrow, who appears near a particular pond in the forest. The legend has it that she was a young bride who met a tragic end on her wedding day. And she was to meet her groom by that pond, but instead, she found him dead, victim of a highwayman's bullet. Overcome with grief, she didn't want to live anymore. Now her ghost lingers, eternally searching for her lost love. But the most chilling tale of Epping Forest is perhaps the story of the hanging tree. In the heart of the woods stands an ancient oak, gnarled and twisted, its branches like skeletal fingers reaching towards the sky. And this tree, according to local lore, was once used for executions. Criminals and traitors were hanged from it as a warning to others. And the souls of those executed here are said to be forever bound to the tree, and on certain nights, witnesses claim to see the bodies of these unfortunate souls swinging from the branches, their ghostly faces twisted in agony. For decades, the woods has attracted ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, and thrill seekers, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural. Many have left terrified, convinced that they've encountered something beyond explanation. In 2017, a group of paranormal investigators set out to spend the night in Epping Forest, armed with the latest technology to capture evidence of the hauntings. As they made their way deeper into the tree line, hours passed without incident. And just as they were about to call it a night, something happened that, according to them, would change their lives forever. The team's lead investigator suddenly froze in place, his eyes wide because in the distance, he saw it. A figure, faint at first but growing clearer. It was a man dressed in old-fashioned clothing, standing motionless under the hanging tree. The investigator called out, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, he began to walk towards them, slowly and deliberately. And just as they thought they would be face to face with the apparition, then it just vanished into thin air. So are all these encounters truly the restless spirits of those who died tragically within the forest depths? Or is there something else at play? An energy, an ancient curse that keeps these souls trapped in a loop of eternal torment? And the truth may never be known, but one thing is certain: Epping Forest is a place where the past refuses to stay buried. The line between the living and the dead blurs, where the spirits of the lost continue to walk among us. Number 2. The strange discovery of Todd Seas. On a warm summer morning in North Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, Todd Seas, 39-year-old father of 2, kissed his family goodbye and set out to do some deer spotting. As an experienced outdoorsman, he had planned to do a simple scout of the dense woods behind his home, but this story became anything but simple. By all accounts, Todd was just a regular family man. That day he told his wife he'd be back around noon. As it got later in the afternoon and he still hadn't come home, he understandably grew concerned. Her and her son then set out to look for him. And that's when his boy found Todd's ATV on top of a ridge around 2 miles away from their house. It was just sitting there, abandoned. With no sign of Todd by 2:30, police were called in and the search began. Around his vehicle, there were no footprints to indicate which direction he may have headed off in, and what's even stranger is that canines were unable to pick up his scent anywhere either. It was like he'd been plucked up into the sky. The search lasted well into the night. The next morning, it intensified as they combed a 6-mile radius, tracing every trail Todd might have taken. Dive teams went into a pond within that area, but still nothing. But then that night at around 8 p.m., that's when the discovery was made. And Todd Seas was found, but his lifeless body was in a location so strange and unexplainable that it would ignite a firestorm of speculation and controversy. And he was found lying on the side of a tree-covered hill, just 150 yards away from his home, a spot that had been thoroughly searched multiple times before. He was only wearing his underwear, his clothes nowhere to be found. According to witnesses, he looked emaciated, with a look of fear frozen on his face. There were no signs of a struggle, no injuries that could explain his death. The cause of death was officially listed as undetermined. It wasn't just the location or condition of his body that was bizarre. It was what happened next that turned a tragic accident into a full-blown mystery. Witnesses then came forward with chilling stories that seemed straight out of a science fiction novel. And several residents reported seeing strange lights in the sky the morning that Todd went missing, lights that hovered over the very area where he'd last been seen. Others claimed they saw a large metallic object, something that looked suspiciously like a UFO descending into the woods. But the most shocking claim came from a farmer who said he saw what looked like a beam of light pulling something or someone up into the sky. The local authorities were quick to dismiss these reports as nothing more than fanciful stories. The lack of a clear explanation for Todd's death only fueled the rumors. And some believed he had been the victim of a tragic accident, perhaps a fall or medical emergency, and others weren't so sure. The conditions of his body, the strange lights, the missing clothes, it all pointed to something unexplainable by normal standards. Files went missing, statements were retracted, and soon the case of Todd Seas became shrouded in an almost impenetrable veil of secrecy, which is where it still stands today. Number 1. A haunting final image. It was supposed to be an exciting adventure for a Boy Scout troop as they were to hike to the summit of Southern California's highest peak at 11,503 feet, San Gorgonio Mountain. It would give the boys a sense of accomplishment that can only be found by putting in the effort in the great outdoors. It would be 12-year-old Jared Negrate's first overnight backpacking trip, which he was excited about, but unfortunately, it would also be his last. It was July 19, 1991 when they set out from base. The hike began smoothly with a group of 6 boys and 1 leader making good progress. And Jared, like the other boys, was by all accounts enjoying the serene nature around, but as they ascended higher, the trail became steeper and more challenging. Jared, who was slightly overweight and not as fast as the others, began to lag behind. Still though, the group continued to move forward, unaware that each step they took was widening the gap between them and Jared. As the group neared the summit at around 6 p.m., that's when the Scoutmaster noticed Jared was no longer with them. Another hiking group reached the top and told them that they had seen the boy headed down the mountain. And they cut their stay at the top shore, and the Scoutmaster and other 5 boys headed back down to base, intending to pick up Jared along the way. And they called out as they descended, but there was no response. The initial worry began to turn into panic. The Scoutmaster searched frantically, but the boy had vanished. By nightfall, Jared was still missing, and the decision was made to alert the authorities. And what followed was a large-scale search operation that would involve over 3,000 people scouring more than 50 square miles of terrain. For weeks, they pushed their way through every inch of the wilderness. And helicopters flew overhead, and dogs were brought in to pick up Jared's scent. And clues were discovered. A shoe they thought belonged to Jared, some candy wrappers of his, and a beef jerky package was found. And then, next to that, Jared's camera. Now, these items were found not far from where Jared was last seen. A roll of film inside was developed, revealing a series of photos of the landscape taken prior to his vanishing. But the last photo, well, that's the one that sticks in everybody's memory. It is a close-up of Jared's face, wide-eyed and taken in the middle of the night. This photo looks like he might have been fully aware of the trouble he was in, that he possibly fell down a steep embankment to which there were many on the mountain, only to find that there was no way out. What really happened to Jared Negrate is tough to say for sure. Was he injured? Did he get lost? Did a predator come upon him? And to this day, Jared's disappearance remains one of California's most haunting mysteries. His family, still heartbroken, holds on to hope that one day they will find answers, if for nothing else, and to at least bring a sense of closure and properly lay their son to rest once and for all.